1,000 subscribers. Now, when I first started this channel, basically it's something to keep me motivated to work on my own projects and, you know, have a little fun along the way. I never thought there would be 1,000 people that would want to follow along with a guy that has no personality but has a majestic mouth mullet. Anyway, today what we're going to do on the channel is something I really never did before, and that's, you know, talk about why I'm here, what interested me to get here, what projects are on the channel, and why you should watch and bring your friends along. So let's follow the Fu Manchu and let's get to it. Well, through the magic of editing, I'm now sitting down. So let's get into what this video is going to be about. And no, today we're not doing a project because I'm just so super stoked that I got 1,000 subscribers. Actually, just a little over. I'm going to count you guys down there in a 0.01. I see you. Thanks for watching. Now, this video today is going to overview why this channel exists and why do I do this. I have a full-time job that, you know, satisfies my needs as far as, you know, just daily life, but I always wanted something more. So, of course, I will put everything down in timestamps so you can skip around and see what you want to see. But we're going to start with first going through the projects that are on the channel so you know what's all here. And then we're going to go into the history of each project as we talk about it, and then we're going to go into my history and why I'm doing this and why I enjoy putting out content for you guys. So grab your favorite beverage, crack it open, and let's get started with the project that started this channel. So the very first project that started this channel is my 1987 Camaro Z28. I have always been a fan of third gens, and this car was something that I found behind someone's house that had been just kind of sitting for many years. And I always wanted a mid-cycle Z28, so 85 to 87, which is where the IROC was also the option package on top of the Z28, but I wanted the Z because of the two-tone paint, the quad stripe down the side. I just thought was a really good looking car. And the one I found, which you can see in the pictures I'm putting up along the way, is a fairly special, just base, you know, Z28, a non-IROC car, because it has the optional fog lights, which you really didn't see a whole lot on the non-IROC cars. It had the deluxe interior, it had the overhead console with T-tops, along with being equipped with the LB9 tune port 305 engine, all original. The only issue with the automatic version of that engine is it had a different camshaft and really didn't make all that much horsepower. I think they were rated at 190 horse, which is the same as the early LG4 4-barrel and L69. The terms kind of interchange. The L69 was a high output 4-barrel 305 that made 190 horse. Later got downgraded to the LG4 after the tune port motors came out and kind of stuck their presence as the big dog motors. So one reason why I really wanted a third gen Camaro, and well, why I was obsessed with Camaros in the first place, is this book right here. This is a pretty, well, old by my standards book. This is Camaro Style, Speed, and Spirit. I was in 4th grade. My grandparents got this for me. And you can see that the pages are basically falling out of this thing. I have read this book cover to cover God, probably 100 times. So all this knowledge is locked in my head, and it's actually a really good book full of a lot of production knowledge and all the options. And there goes my note sheet. But this book right here was really started it for Camaros for me, and especially the third gens, and why I learned so much about them. So that is pretty cool. Anyway, on that particular Camaro that I purchased, I think I gave them $800 for it. It didn't run, and this was long before I started the channel. I brought it home, I pulled the fuel tank out of it, I actually bought another fuel tank, put a new pump in it, put that in, and then discovered that when I pulled the cap off the distributor, because I wasn't getting any spark either, is the wires going to the ignition module were all frayed and stuff. So I fixed that, I put another distributor in it, and the car fired right to life. Didn't smoke, anything like that, had fairly low miles on it, and I just went straight to driving the thing. I probably drove it for 6 months, really solid. I enjoyed driving it. It needed work. The body was okay. The floors were starting to get rusty, as you can see in the first videos. And one night I might have been a little harder on it than I should have, and I was holding a, of course, legal speed for a long amount of time, and I don't know if something got in an injector or I lost spark on that cylinder, but cylinder number 7 decided to delete itself. It's a couple of my shorts, you can see what happened to the piston. Basically the ring lamps were completely gone on one side, so the car sat, and that's when I decided to start the channel, and seeing what was wrong with the engine. I didn't know at the time that it melted a piston, so we were trying to go through it, try to get it running, figured out that there's basically no compression on that cylinder, and decided to pull the drivetrain out and put the drivetrain in from my 98 3/4 ton Chevy, which is a 4-bolt Vortec 350, an L31 and a 4L80. Well, as you can see by the title of the playlist that car currently occupies, it's the Forever Z28 project, because I'm on and off it so much, because I've got serious ADD when it comes to new shiny thing. So that car, in its current state, is fully wired with the Vortec underhood harness, the relay center, all that. It does crank over. I just don't have the fuel system in it yet or a drive shaft. But other than that, that's pretty much how far I got. And it's actually pretty in-depth, going from an OBD1 car to turning it over to OBD2 with all the control systems from that truck. So that is something that will be coming back in the shop sometime. I love that car. I want to keep it. I'm not getting rid of it. It's not going anywhere. My plans changed daily on it, whether I'm going to continue the path I'm on, or if that car is just going to become a full restoration, because it is a pretty special car, being a TunePort non-IROC Z28. So you can go ahead, check that playlist out. There's, I don't know, there's a handful of videos on it, between getting the drivetrain out, new drivetrain in, working on the wiring, getting the cluster wired, just a lot of stuff going on with that car, and I really got nowhere with it. So I'm gonna grab my sheet of paper, have a drink, and then we'll go on to project number 2. Well, all right, the second project, I think it's the second, I'm gonna try and keep these in chronological order. The second thing that showed up on the channel is my 1970 Jayco Pop-up. It's a vintage Pop-up. It's a Jayco J Eagle 8G for those who are, you know, pop-up linguistics masters. Anyway, so this is a very old vintage pop-up camper, and when I was a kid, we had a modern Jayco, 1991. We got it new, and since then I just always loved Jaycos. It's kind of the, you know, the first thing a baby bird sees is now its mom. You know, that kind of thing. So I found this old Jayco in a trailer park up near a major city up here in Wisconsin, near Madison, that a couple $100 is all they wanted for it. And it was actually in really good shape. Usually you don't see pop-ups over 30 years old that the canvas is intact and all that, and the crank system still works. So I bought it just because the main thing with those old Jaycos is back in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, they had all the screens in them were green instead of black or whatever. And I always remember seeing them at the local state parks, and it just blew my mind how cool it was that, oh my God, the screens aren't black, they're green, because I'm a very simple person and those things excite me. So I get this camper and I gave you guys a tour of it, the operation on it and all that, and there is another video in that playlist where I started working on it, kind of bringing it around slowly, mainly because trying to get a canvas for it that is a factory, green screen and all that's pretty hard. So I went around, we cleaned up the roof, cleaned up the trim, got the mold out of the canvas, and put new lighting on it. I've been camping in that camper for 4 years, I think 3 or 4 years, and it's worked splendidly ever since. It's watertight. I don't have to worry about anything. It pulls great. And I always love the comments I get when I'm out camping with it, because it's 54 years old. It's just not something you see anymore. So a lot of people that remember those new that are still camping always come up and ask about it, which is really neat. And there will be future stuff coming on that as we go along. It's not a priority project because it functions now. I would like to rebuild the roof just to make it perfect and get new canvas on it and paint it back, the green part on it to the factory. But that's down the road. That's just something that, vintage stuff like that always interested me. And there's the history behind it. Like, I could tell you the whole history of the Jayco Motor Coach Corporation if I really wanted to, but I don't want to bore you to death. So the next actual big project that still exists today and I'm still working on is Project Brute Farce, which is my 2000 Dodge Ram 2500 V10. And that was something that I explained in the last video that I acquired on a trade, and got the truck, got it running. Of course, you can see the first, poor quality video where I put a bed on it and drove it home, and kind of left it alone, drove it around, and got tired of when I drive it in the snow. More snow came in the truck than wound up on the truck. So we ended up body swapping it, and I put work into the front suspension and just making it a good tow rig. So that truck, of course, you guys already heard the history on it. There's not much else to tell, but that's gonna keep popping in and out of the channel with basic maintenance stuff, other upgrades, and just making it better and better and better, because in my opinion, the second gen Ram is like the new square body as far as how many people want them and how the prices are going on them, which are getting pretty out of hand. Even non-diesel second gens are getting up there to where they're asking double what I paid for my pretty nice half ton, which brings up the half ton, which I call Redram. That truck I bought with just under 100,000 miles on it, and I daily drove it forever until I bought my 17 Laramie, and it's just kind of been sitting. I don't want to drive it too much because these trucks are known for rust. I don't want it to get worse, and I want to fix it up. And actually, behind the camera are a set of 392 axles with a posi, which is what the off-road edition would have in it. I've already got the ORE wheels on it, and I'd like to do the axle swap because a 360 with 355 gears on 35s is a gutless, fuel-sucking pig. So expect to see that come back when we do the axle swap, and we'll do a performance comparison between a 355 gear and a 392 gear to see if it's even worth doing a swap with a stock Magnum 5.9 under hood. So that explains, the two second gens in my life. Both are 2000s. One's a half ton V8, extended cab short bed. One's 3/4 ton V10 extended cab short bed. And then we get into the obscure project, the kind of just for the hell of it, because I like getting odd looks from my neighbors, and that is Lawn and Order. My God knows what year it is, MTD riding mower that I decided to put an aluminum hood scoop on and paint satin white and put old school, like 60s drag racy lettering on it with a name, Law and Order, and a displacement and all that gobbledygook. And that will be coming back just because I blew it up. Turns out these old Vanguard Briggs and Strattons, when they start burning oil on one cylinder and they start losing power, they really don't like it when you keep turning out the governor to make it spin faster so you can mow your lawn without going half a mile an hour. So it started rod knocking the last time I mowed with it, right as I was finishing up. So that's going to need a motor. I'm probably going to put something with more horsepower in it because I'm an idiot. And you'll see that come back to the channel and we probably blow it up again until I finally give up and buy a nice mower. So then we move on to something that's not so much a project, but very much a part of me and a part of this channel, is my daily work rig. The 2024 International HX520 that was bought for me by my company because I've been working for this particular company going on 8 years, and I'm one of the more senior drivers there, so when that truck came, I was ecstatic. And of course, I've done a review when I first got it. We've done the 100,000 mile review, and we're nipping close. We're in 8,000 miles of putting 200,000 on it. And it's been a great truck. Not much else to say about it. I've done some upgrades to it myself. We put a bunch of lights on it. I put matching lights in the lower rake of the herd bumper. And there's a couple of things I want to do to that. Small projects for you truck driving guys, especially something when it comes to the smart wheel on it, which most new trucks, on the steering wheel, you have the buttons for the cruise, the radio, the what have you. And it really makes it hard to put an aftermarket wheel in one of these trucks, which any of us that's held a wood wheel on chrome spokes, there's nothing better. So I've been plotting a way to make those steering wheels controls work with an aftermarket wheel, which one of the companies does that currently with like the PACCAR wheels, the Kenworth and the Peterbilt, so you could put an aftermarket wheel on it, but there's just really little support for these international newer cab models for anything like that. So I've got something figured out with that, and a couple other touches that I think a lot of you international guys would really appreciate that maybe they should have done from the factory, but they just didn't do. So we'll get to that. And of course, I'll probably have an update on an extra video for that truck once we hit 200K. Check in on the truck, see what's what, see what the quality is after getting that many miles on it. If anything's shaken off of it or not. So look forward to that if you're one of my trucking, consumers that watch the videos. Okay, there's actually a lot more things on this channel than what I realized. And the next one is what's sitting right next to me, is my 2019 Challenger RT. Now there's nothing special really about this car. It's just a 5.7 Hemi. It's not, beat all fast. It's a very fun car. It's got a 6-speed manual in it. And it's got the classic package, of course, with these white billboards, which I've yet to see another one in B5 blue with the white billboards. And this is my ultimate average modern muscle car. This is something I've been tinkering with. I don't want to go hog wild on this because it's, other than my V10, this is my daily driver, and it's just something I want to have fun with when I'm getting bogged down on a project. I'll go out, hop in this car, and have some fun. What I've done to it is kind of add to the classic look by adding badging that would be very close to what the factory badging was back in like 1970, 71. With the displacement callouts on the hood, the old school script on the back, stuff like that, that a hot rodder or a muscle car fan in the 70s would have done to their Challenger. Swapped in a pistol grip shifter with Hurst billet, competition +2 shifter. Also, we did exhaust on this, which got rid of the factory RT exhaust. So in 17, the RTs went to a Scat Pack style exhaust, which had the X pipe in it instead of an H pipe. You had to flow through mid mufflers and the can style resonators on it instead of the suitcases out back. But on the RTs, it was a 2.5 inch off the downpipes, whereas a 392 car was 3 inch. So I actually bought the exhaust off of a 392 car that is 3 inch and already had Flowmaster Super 10s in the mid muffler position, which is my favorite muffler of all time when it comes to tone. Put it on anything, it'll sound great. So did the exhaust, we did resonator deletes and tips out back. I love the way this car sounds. I typically hate the sound of a straight piped, like Hellcat, stuff like that. It's just too much. You don't have the tone, you just have the noise. This really, really sounds good, and I really love this car. And the reason why I got it is I had my 17 Ram. I decided I didn't need 3 full-size pickups, and I started kicking around the idea of buying a Challenger. Since these came out, I always wanted one. I think they're one of the best looking modern cars out there. Are they the best all around? No. But it is a very comfortable, quick, fun car that handles all right. So I was looking for one. I kind of gave up on it because they kept throwing at me like a $60,000 wide body Scat Pack SRT, and I told them it had to be a 6-speed. And I was actually out in Utah months after I'd given up on getting a Challenger in a decent price range. And my dealer contacted me with this one, and I go, I don't care what it costs, I'm going to buy it. And I actually got a really, really good deal on it. It had no miles on it when I bought it. You know, just, I had to have it. And it's one of those things that before my grandma passed away, she had said that she'd done everything she wanted to do. She's had everything she wanted to have, and she had a great life. And I always said the cheap guy, I don't want to spend money. So I finally thought, you know what? I will never get to say that if I don't just do it. So here we have the ultimate average muscle car, my daily driver, 19 RT 6-speed Hemi Challenger. So this is pretty, common on the channel. It made it on Power Tour. There's a couple of things I want to do that are really, really cool. I really want to do color match steel wheels with poverty caps on this thing, and I think it would make this thing pop so nice. And a couple other small things. I'm really not going to go wild with it. I'm making payments on it. So that is this car. So now we're getting into a couple of the bigger builds on my channel, and I just realized I did it a little bit out of order. But the first I call a build on the channel is my son's 1986 GMC C1500 that we built a small block for that makes, with a better intake, it'd make 400 horse. I've just got a performer on there now. Pretty stout little engine, fun little engine, 700 R4 in it. It just was a fun truck. And the reason why that truck made it on the channel and why it was a special build for me to hand down to my son is, I'll throw pictures up. I bought this truck from a junkyard. So I used to go out to this local junkyard because I just liked walking around doing so. I was always buying something from there and fixing it up and driving it and stuff like that. And one day I was down there and this halfway decent, half-ton square body GMC was there. And I don't know why they dropped it off. I looked over the truck and there was a hole in the frame above the bump stop on the driver's side, just directly above the rear axle. And the flanges were good, there's just a hole. I'm like, a big deal. There's not much spring load there. It's a half-ton, doesn't look like I hauled anything with it. And it had a 4.3 in it. So it had a 4.3 with a quadrajet, a TH400 factory. I don't know why it was set up that way, it just was. It is Sierra Classic, so all the options aside from like power doors and locks. AC, cruise, yada yada, the 4 headlights, the V22 option. And I had to have it. Again, shiny thing, make me go, ooh, and I gotta have it. So I paid $800, I think, for that truck as well. And I drove the pants off it. I rebuilt the carburetor because the charcoal canister decided to suck all the charcoal in through the vacuum line into the carburetor, clogging the jets so the metering rods couldn't get down in them, and it was just a mess. So I rebuilt it, and I drove that truck everywhere. I drove it in the winter, I drove it in summer, I put a topper on it. It was a great truck. I think I got like 17 miles a gallon with it, which wasn't bad being a 3-speed automatic. And I got in my head that, boy golly, I really wanted a Camaro. And I didn't have one. I've had several Camaros in my life, but I wanted another one. I missed having T-tops. So, stupidly, I sold that truck for $1,500. And I went out and I bought one of the crappiest 3rd-gen Camaros I could find. The black on black RS that had some Z28 parts on it. It was just a pile of shit. Oh, it was terrible. Had an LO3, T.P.I 305. And anyway, it was just an awful car. It didn't last long. So I sold that truck, and I kept thinking about it, kept thinking about it, kept thinking about it. And the guy that bought it lives about 10 miles away from me. So one day, I went out there, I left a note. He called me, I went back out there, and I asked if he'd sell it. There was no drivetrain in it anymore. And I'm like, I will give you $1,000 for the truck. I didn't know what it was worth. I didn't care what it was worth. I wanted the truck because I'm from Wisconsin. This truck was built in Janesville while my grandfather worked at GM. So I had to have it back because of the history with that, the history with me owning it, and I wanted to pass it down to my son. So that's the history on that truck and why it got built. And currently it got in a little incident. The box is toast, which it was rusty anyway, so no big deal. So I actually have a pretty big plan for that truck. And it involves not being 2-wheel drive anymore. So I've got a pretty cool idea on how to accomplish that on a budget. So we're gonna bring that truck home and basically blow it apart, because all I really want to keep is the cab and the front clip, because body wise it's about all that's good on it. The frame already had that issue with the hole in it, which I had patched forever ago, and I don't know if it got tweaked when the box got messed up or anything like that. So that truck will be coming back in a fairly large project, something really cool that I think a lot of you guys will enjoy. So moving on to the last 2 projects, we're going to start with the biggest project on the channel so far, and that is my 1973 Checker Marathon. That car has taken a lot of work to get where it's at right now. And if you haven't seen it yet or haven't watched the whole process of this car, I had it in my head one day that I wanted to build a Checker Marathon or a taxi cab or whatever, any Checker. And my idea was to build a gasser out of one, because a lot of people have built like a Pro Street style car. There's one on a BMW chassis, stuff like that. There's plenty of custom Checkers. There's actually one guy on the Checker group I'm on Facebook that built a gorgeous 2-door Checker. They never made one. He made a 2-door. It's a phenomenal car, just absolutely awesome. Anyway, and the reason I always had Checker in my head is because of my age. I played Nintendo 64. One of my favorite games was San Francisco Rush and Rush 2. And in that game, you could race the Taxi, which was based on a Checker Marathon. It was more or less on the A9 model with the single headlights, but the A11's similar enough. That is what I have. So that always sat in the back of my head since I was a kid. And I always wanted one because they're so utilitarian and ugly that they're great. So I decided to buy this car for $900. Me and my dad went down, picked it up, and when I tell you this car was clapped, this thing was clapped. Could I have bought a nicer one? Yes. But my mortal enemy in this world is the car crusher, and I have a ridiculous sentimental attachment and a strong, pity for cars. I really, really love cars in all shapes and forms, and I'm like, this ain't gonna die. I'm gonna drag it home. I'm gonna kick myself in the ass every week for buying this car while I'm trying to rebuild it. And right now, it's getting really close. I brought it in, I tore it apart, I knew the front part of the frame was completely collapsed, so I got to build a chassis. So pulled the body off after I braced it, and I built the chassis from scratch. Now this is the stuff that I've never done before. I have the basic knowledge on what I should do, and I have smarter friends than I that can help me along the way. So we built a full custom chassis for it. I picked up a big block for it that was, again, trashed because I'm a moron and I don't pay any money for anything. So that video is also on the channel, tearing that thing apart. And I got a 4-speed. So that's the plan. Big block 4-speed, gasser with a solid front axle out of an XJ Cherokee, out of a 2-wheel drive, just beam axle with leaf springs and all of such to turn it into a gasser with the nose high stance. The floors just got put in it. There's a short of me showing that off, and they look phenomenal. I can't thank my buddies enough that helped me with that, and we got to get that home, because next video that's going to be in, I'm replacing the rear wheel tubs. We're going to widen them and then finish the back seat area and get it done, because right now the body is solidly mounted to the chassis for the first time in 30 years, and we're going to get it done. So there's playlists for that from the very beginning up till current day. It's the project I'm most proud of because I have stuck a lot of sweat equity in this thing and not taking the easy way out, because this is a budget channel. I could buy parts for that car and put it together and spend a fortune on what was just a basket case of a car. I'm not going to do that. So that's why this car's taken longer than I anticipated, but in the end is creating a really, really bitchin' machine. So we got one project left, and I don't know if you could see it just off camera, is another childhood thing, and that's my 1980 Scorpion TK, and it's the sleds I grew up riding. I wasn't born when they were still being manufactured. They were defunct for 7 years by the time that I was born. So I grew up riding them because my dad was always riding old sleds and grew up with stuff like that, and he always had a pile of vintage sleds. We were just talking about it today, how like one engine made it from this sled to that sled to this sled because the sled would fall apart or someone would wreck it or this or that. And my dad was always the master of making everything work, and making a Polaris engine work and a Yamaha Enticer that was meant for a 250 single cylinder and stuff like that. And he was always working on sleds. He was a carb god when it comes to any carburetor, and I just remember working on them with him and remember just riding the snot out of these things. And I always wanted one for myself. So again, me being cheap, I bought the worst possible one I could find and brought it home. And there is the plan in motion for this winter. We're going to get that thing rideable. And that's going to actually turn into a pretty, I won't call it a high-end build. The end result is going to be high-end, but it's still at its roots a budget build. So that's all 10 projects that is right here on T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And hopefully, if one of them interests you, go ahead and put the whole playlist on play. Invite your friends. Tell a stranger. When the mailman sticks his arm in your mailbox, just grab him and go, hey, watch this. I don't condone violence, but if it helps. So now we're going to move on to why I'm here. Why is channel? So I'm going to take a quick break and we're going to get back to it. All right. So why did I decide to start a YouTube channel? And I suppose it's an interesting story. I actually decided to start YouTubing after the first time I saw Vice Grip Garage, and I was way behind the curve on watching it. He was years in before I started watching it, and I actually watched it only because I was camping one weekend and celebrated a little too much the night before, and I was just laying in the camper nursing a headache and watching YouTube on my tablet, and I got onto that. So I started watching. It's like, well, I need to start working on my projects. That's where Z28 came in. It's like, well, you know, I've got a passion for cars. There's only a few things in this life I know how to do well. One is drive truck, and two is work on stuff. Not really good at a whole lot else. So I decided to start my own channel because it gave me motivation to work on my own stuff and like film it across the way, because out of all the YouTube channels out there, and there's a lot, it is hard to compete with, but at the same time, there's a lot of drive at home channels. I mean, everybody is doing that now. It's like, will it run and drive? Will this and that? I mean, there's not anything to take away anything from the guys that do it, but there's only so many times you could watch someone pour fuel down a carburetor or put plugs in something. If you're not Derek, I mean, there's the OG of everything. And it's just so oversaturated with that kind of stuff that I decided, well, I've got a lot of knowledge that I haven't really heard on YouTube yet, that slowly when I let my personality out, it gets to it. But I also really enjoy long form builds. I grew up watching, as probably many of you did, watching T.N.T. on Sundays, where it was like trucks and horsepower TV that were really the original two, and then came along like Muscle Car and Extreme 4x4, and then it became Power Block, and it was still those shows, and then it became Power Nation, and it was the same shows just with really generic names like Engine Power or Truck Tech. And it kind of jumped the shark for me at that point, because, you know, you can only watch so many big block Chevys get twin turbos and make 600 horsepower. I love the shows. I love the guys that were on them. And I did enjoy most of all on that is the long-term builds. Like, you always get excited to see a project come back, like Stacy David and Copperhead. Everybody knows Project Copperhead. And if you don't, it's a 68 72 regular cab short bed with 572. It's just a gorgeous truck. You know what Copperhead is. And he had Big Blaze, and he had the High Sierra and all this other stuff that he built. And he's one of like the first car guys I really got into, because he is an incredible fabricator and just has a mind for it. So I decided to go that route because, you know, you see guys like Gas Monkey Garage, they do longer term builds, but it's high dollar. And at its roots, I always want to be a budget channel. Like, if I can do it, you guys watching can absolutely go out and do it without breaking the bank, without, you know, needing to know a lot of stuff. You can learn all this along the way, and that's what I'm trying to help facilitate. Is if I can get into the weeds on something I've never done before, you guys shouldn't be scared to either. I do have a wealth of experience in the automotive field. I started working on cars when I was 16, so it just kind of comes naturally to me, but that doesn't mean anything. Anyone can learn. So that's why this channel is here, along with motivation for me to do my projects, is to show you guys that you don't need a huge bank account to build your dream build, unless you want a Lamborghini, which you're watching the wrong channel for that. You can pretty much get anything and make it what you want it to be with just some sweat equity. You don't have to stick a bunch of money into it. So I will always be a budget channel. I will never go out and buy a crate motor and a this and a that and a do this. Oh, I got a, you know, whatever aluminum center section Ford 9-inch quick change stop. But no, if I'm gonna have cool stuff, it's going to be fabricated by me and probably my buddies that are a lot smarter than me and a lot better with metalworking. So it won't be cheap. Like, at the end, it won't look cheap or chintzy or anything like that, because, like I said, people are smarter than me that help me on those big ones that are close friends of mine. But it'll look good. It'll work good. You don't need to spend the big money. You don't. The only times I would really spend money versus making it myself or getting a used part is, say, when I built my small block Chevy, we put aluminum heads on that because they were cheaper than having a vortex gone through. So yeah, if I buy new parts, there's a reason, because it's more cost effective to get a new part versus send a head out or something like that to a machine shop and have them do it. If I had my own machine shop, I would do it. I do have some machining experience, not a lot, but I did work in a machine shop for a while. So that's basically the point of this channel, is to kind of bring you guys in along the ride and just show you, hey man, you can do it too. You know, you don't have to be huge. You don't have to, you know, have 8 billion people, you know, following you, nothing like that. I'm just a small-time guy doing small-time things with a small-time budget. And it's working out. And when that checker's done, hopefully you guys follow along the way, I think it's going to be pretty amazing. So that is why I started this channel, mainly for my own motivation, because if I don't every 2 weeks go, hey man, I gotta make a video, I gotta get something done, I would probably never work on anything, because it's air conditioned in the house, it's air conditioned in my truck. Not that I'm a lazy person, but I'm not called an amateur procrastinator. Let's just say that. So that is what this channel is and forever will be, is a budget channel that anything I do, you guys can do. I will never just outstrip anybody else's abilities to do something, because cool builds that are big dollar are nice and they're fun to watch, but it's unobtainium, you know? And I would rather give you guys the tools to do a project that looks high end, but all it took was time and, you know, just a little bit of willingness to learn. So that's why this channel is here. Now, why am I into cars? Well, that's simple. That's I've always been into cars. Always, 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 always. From the time that I could pick up a pencil or a crayon, I drew cars. I just loved them. Just something about them. I always had an emotional attachment to cars. You know, I remember, God, being in a car seat in the back of my dad's 81 Z, not Z, but 81 Camaro that was originally a base sport coupe with a 305 and a 4-speed. And he had put a 350 in it with a dump-top cam, so the DZ302 cam, and originally had dual quads and a cast iron intake from a Corvette on it. That never ran right with the points ignition. So he put a Performer, a 750 Holly, and an HEI in it, and the car made pretty good power. Nice cam look to it, and I still remember sitting in the back looking at, if you know second gen Camaros, 75 up, they had to wrap around rear window. And I remember looking out the window, and it had rear defrost, and there was a Holly sticker, the old Holly equipped sticker, right in the corner. And I just remember looking at that as this cam thumped away as we were idling. So that was a memory like that to retain. I'm screwed. I'm gonna spend so much money on cars for the rest of my life. And then to top it off, our family car was an 86 Monte SS. Now everyone says, you know, the Grand National is a G-body to have, blah, blah. Yes, they're faster, they're more rare, yada, yada, yada. Hands down, the Monte Carlo is probably the best looking car built in the 80s. As far as the SS goes, I prefer the 86 and 85 Montes because of the stripe package, and just that little pinstripe around the grill does it all for me, along with the spelled out Monte Carlo SS on the doors and on the back. And I could pick apart any Monte just by looking at it, what year it is, whatever. It's a tism for me. And that is my dream car. That will be on this channel one day. But from the Camaro to the Monte Carlo, even we had an 86 S10 Blazer that ended up becoming mine when I got my license. I love that thing. It was horrible. It was in good shape, but it had a 2.8 in it, 4-wheel drive. It went 0 to 60 in maybe. That's, you know, but I just loved it. I had an attachment to it. And I've owned 40 cars. I suck at selling them. I usually keep them around until they either rot to the ground or I just don't have the money to fix them, then I get rid of them. But that's where my love of cars started. And then I started drawing cars, and I got deeper into drawing cars, and that's all I would do. That was I should say that was my personality. That still is my personality. You could talk to me about anything, and I'm going to bring up cars. It's awful. But once I got older and I'd start getting close to driving and this and that, and I was always tinkering with stuff. Like when I was a kid, I had this little play school steering wheel thing that went everywhere with me. And I would take it apart to see how it worked. There's actually quite a few things to it. I'd find one of Dad's screwdrivers, and I'd take all the little screws out, and I'd take it apart and look at it, and then I'd put it back together so I didn't get my ass kicked by ruining one of my toys. So I always figured out how to take stuff apart, put it back together, and make it work when I was really young, which helped me out later in life, because when I started wrenching, at least professionally, when I was 16, I was still in high school, I had gotten into our apprenticeship program. And I spent time at a dealership under the tutelage of probably one of the best technicians I've ever met in my life. And I kind of got pulled under his wing and began working on cars at a dealership for the first 2 years of my career till I graduated high school. And just being able to have that knowledge and just that brain function to look at something in an exploded view before you take it apart. I would take stuff apart, just throw all the bolts in one box, and no one could figure out how I could get it back together. I took a 4.7 Jeep engine apart for my own vehicle. I left it apart in boxes. We're rod bolts with fender bolts and this and that, and I put it back together weeks later. And no one ever thought that thing would run again, and I drove it out of that shop without a single issue. So I ended up continuing to wrench until 2013, I think. So however long that is, 10 years. And the only reason I quit is I kept moving up. I kept, I was senior tech here. I got to the engine builder here, and I was really running out of steps to go up to where the money came with it, which is really what it was. And even back in 2010, when you're building engines and rebuilding engines and doing diesel diagnostics and electrical diagnostics and all this high-end stuff that you do in a shop, and you're making $16 an hour, it just don't cut it. And so I decided to drive truck, and I'm still doing that. And now it makes it a lot sweeter for me to work on stuff that's mine because I'm not working on everyone else's all day. And truck driving is also a thing that I'm passionate about. Same thing, I get attached to these trucks, and I've always wanted to drive truck, and I probably always will in some capacity. I'll always probably have a day job driving a truck because I love driving. As long as it's a manual, that's the only thing. I'm not going to go on about that. But anyway, when I was also a child, that steering wheel I was talking about, that I took apart, put back together about 5,000 times, when, most kids play with their Hot Wheels or do this or do that or draw, I would sit in my bedroom. I had this toy box, the old Play School one with the plastic lid and all that, and I'd set the steering wheel on that. And I made a CD radio out of Legos, which, not hard to do. You make a brick out of bricks. But, see, I was a thinking kid. How are you going to attach the mic to the radio? So I stole one of the curly Q phone cords from somewhere in the house. I'm sure they were happy about that. And I taped it with that old white medical tape to the mic and then to the radio. And then I had one of them old Play School things that had a rocker on the bottom that you put the stupid rings on that got bigger to small. That was my shifter. And I would just sit there for hours, turning the steering wheel, moving the shifter, talking into a Lego CB. So no wonder I became a truck driver. So that's basically brings us up to modern day and why I'm doing this with what little spare time I really have. That's also why I do videos in a bi-weekly format, is because I just don't have the time to start a project every week and make a coherent video out of it. So it typically takes me a couple weekends worth of time to make a video that makes any sense for you guys. So, I mean, that's the projects of the channel, the why the me. There's probably not a whole lot more I could ramble about. I mean, I could, but that's for the therapist to figure out. Well, now you guys have heard about all the projects on this channel, and even I didn't realize I had 10. And we're what, up to mid-80s, 90 long length videos. So we're gonna keep going up from there, because I believe every car has a soul, and they all have their own story. Maybe not something that's new, but like the checker or the old square body, or maybe what's sitting in your garage or driveway. And I want to do my best to preserve that soul and hear that story, and hopefully help you guys find that soul and story in your project. So thank you for supporting the channel and getting us to 1,000 subscribers so far. I'm beside myself. I never thought it'd get this far. I was doing this for my own motivation, and hey, if you guys enjoy it, I'm gonna keep doing it. So we're gonna get to bigger projects down the line, because I have so much time on the road to think about stuff to build and this and that, and ideas that are probably terrible, but they sit up here anyway, and I have enough time to scour the internet, look at this, and see what's been done and what hasn't. I want to do stuff that hasn't been done, because, well, as it stands right now, I am the first YouTube channel and the only YouTube channel that has a checkered marathon gasser, which is the first in the world. From all my research, there's plenty of other builds on those type of cars, but I am the very first checker gasser, and you're seeing it right here on T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And of course, you know, you'll see me out and about. You'll see me at Power Tour next year. I make it a point to go to Iola every year, even if I don't have a project to take up there. I'm up there mingling. You know, I have fun. I like talking to people. I love seeing cars. I love hearing the history on your project. So I'm always happy to see that. And of course, I see people out driving around. I see them in the truck. It's amazing. And I'm very grateful for each and every one of you that watch the channel. So, I mean, you guys know where to find me. And those that are new, well, you can find me in all my projects right here on YouTube. There's playlists for every project on the channel that just got thrown up in the corner there. And you can find me at T.N.T. Garage and Performance on Facebook, and T.N.T. Garage and Performance on Instagram. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. I love to reply to all you guys. Of course, if you got criticisms, questions, comments, or just kudos, hey, I'm here for it. So as we do that, and we can continue on making this channel grow, hopefully with the blessing of you guys, well, remember, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.